Hi, I'm filming outside because it looks like we have a 3-day break from the snow, so I guess we're not going to get any snow anymore, and it's going to rain after that. It's already March, and it this snow. I was talking to somebody earlier, and they were saying that this doesn't happen very much, and it does happen though. We have gotten quite a bit of snow like this, and but it doesn't happen every year. This particular one I think is from the Pineapple Express, so it's like a tropical moisture builds up, and then it comes in from the Pacific, and then it hits a high pressure zone, and it gets all this moisture. So that's why we're having weeks of rain. January it rained every day, and the last time I know that happened was in 1991. I wasn't living here at the time, but I remember in 2007 we got we had a snowstorm in February, and then I went down to Southern California just to escape from the cold. And I was down there for a month camping around the desert, and it was nice, but there's really not a lot of places that are warm in anywhere in the United States in February. It's just maybe southern, the deserts, and even then it gets cold at night. So and you're limited by the campsites. I remember camping at one place that was high up in the hills. I think it was in the San Jacinto Mountains, and there was ice. When I woke up in the morning, there would be ice on the water supply. So anyway, I came back, and I think it was in April, we got like 6 feet of snow, and that was maybe 15 years ago. So it happens, and we usually get snow. It gets cold. I haven't been cutting firewood myself. I mean, I haven't been buying firewood because we've just had so many trees falling. 7 years after the fire, we've got trees falling, and so I'm actually having to go back and cut down trees that died like 5 years ago after the fire, not these new ones, because these new ones won't burn. And I'm burning that wood, so it is helping, clearing up things. But I've been working on clearing the roads and keeping the brush from getting too out of control, because we have these oak tree. I guess they're oak trees. Who knows? I'm not an expert on all these things. But some of these, they start off as bushes, and then they grow, and of course a lot of this stuff was gone. So there was very little as far as trees go. A lot of the larger trees died, but then they would grow back again. So you're just starting with it looks like a bush, and I know that there's some of the bushes are just bushes. And some of them are oak trees. So I've been kind of pruning them. So, cutting off, the less major limbs, so that they will grow back and not have to put so much of their energy into these offshoots. So it seems to be working, but it's like you have to go back, and every year things just grow. You don't really see it unless you're going out there every day and saying, gosh, that wasn't there before. I was just walking up from the pond, and there were, the snow was kind of, sitting on some of these branches on the bushes, and I was like, God, I just cleared this like a couple of months ago. So I'm constantly doing these things, and it's a lot of work, because I'm doing things that I shouldn't be having to do, And instead of concentrating on things like spending time with my family and making food and doing fun things, I'm just doing this stuff that this would never have happened if it hadn't been for somebody else's fault. And I feel like what's happening in East Palestine, I just feel like it's going to be a complete repeat of what happened to me. And the first thing you're going to notice, they're basically lying about everything. They're not telling people what they need to hear. And it's going to, because the government doesn't even want to step in. They're just letting the lawyers take care of it. Like that's what everything's come down to, is it's like you're on your own. You have to deal with these shady lawyers, and a lot of them, this is what they do. They come in to fix these problems, and they're not fixing anything because they don't tell anybody what's going on. In my personal experience, like I was trying to get help from FEMA, and I used to work for FEMA, and they would go down. That wasn't my job when I was there. I was doing something different, but they would go down to Puerto Rico during a hurricane, and it just sounded like, they sounded like they were helping them, but I mean, honestly, I don't know exactly what they were doing there. They wanted to hire me to work on a nuclear power plants in like New Jersey, and there was a nuclear power plant on Long Island, and it never opened because as soon as they finished it, the people of Long Island realized that there was going to be no way for them to escape. But the power plant had been commissioned by the power companies, and so they were paying for this. They paid for this nuclear power plant to be built in a place where there was no way to get out. And eventually they won. The citizens won, and they had to shut down the power plant. But obviously they couldn't just shut it down. It was just there were roomfuls of litigation for this. That was my job, was to take care of these room full of litigation. But my other coworkers would go down to Puerto Rico, and they would help people in hurricanes. I think that was that was their jurisdiction, was Puerto Rico and basically New York, New Jersey, and I think New England. But they rarely have any kind of disasters in New York, New Jersey, and in New England, because there's rarely do the hurricanes make it up that far, and rarely do they have disasters. I'm sure they do. I can't say what they are. I didn't work there for very long. But when I asked for help from FEMA, because I didn't own the house that I lost, it was my parents' house, but they were going to probably give it to me, when they died. I couldn't get any help. Nobody wanted to help me because it was not technically my house. I didn't have the title. So it was just a lot of bullshit having to deal with these people. They didn't want to help me. I mean, they were helping people right and left, giving people trailers. And I guess because I had a place to move into, even though it's 40 years old, it's falling apart, there's gaps in the roof. My parents bought this fifth wheel used, and they used it for maybe 10 years or something, and then they just put it up on blocks, and my dad would stay here when he came up here, and but it's just falling apart. It don't have septic. My house where my house was, I have septic. It's just sitting there, but I had to go through so many, just every time I would talk to a lawyer, it was the same thing. It was just the same thing over and over again. And these people didn't want to help me. They wanted to help my parents because they knew they could get more money from them. And I should have waited to get help. because I think there was a class action lawsuit that was started by the state. Um, um, but I think what happened too with I'll talk about that more. But what happened with the state was, I think the state paid so much to clean up the properties, because there were so many buildings. I say buildings. I mean, I don't really know if they were buildings or if they were trailers or what they were. But they were hiring locals to clean up through this state program. I don't know where these people heard about it, but a lot of them, they didn't lose their homes, so they had the privilege of hearing about these jobs and getting jobs, and they would come around, and a lot of them I don't know who they were. They were coming from the Bay Area, and they would have excavators, and they would load everything. They would load everything onto trucks and haul it away. I had a church help me go through my house, and they had metal detectors. They had about 20 people that came from this church. They were from San Bernardino. It was called Good Samaritans, and they basically just went through the rubble of my house to try to find anything that was a value, which would be of any. No, the only thing that was left would be metal, but they found a few things. I was kind of disappointed just because they didn't find as much as I wanted them to, but they found something. So I guess there's not a lot to find after a fire like that. The fire came from so far away, and it makes me wonder now to this day why they were protecting everyone else and not us. And it's the same thing that's happening in East Palestine. They're protecting all these other places. I mean, they're cleaning up in other places, and the people themselves are having. It's gonna start getting really quiet, because they don't really want you to know what's going on. They don't want to know who's being offered things and who isn't. Just like me, they didn't want to help me with that place to live even. It's just like, oh, you got someplace to live, go away. And it was really frustrating, because it was starting to feel like I was getting teamed up on. It was just one thing after the other. The lawyers didn't want to help me. I mean, honest to God, the lawyers didn't even want to help me, because I didn't have a house, so it was like I was not big money to them. They wanted big money. If you don't own a house, you're just another statistic to them. So the government is not protecting people. The lawyers aren't protecting people. And the first thing that the lawyers, when I finally got them to help me through my parents, we basically, filed a claim together. First thing they asked me was about my health, which was fine at the time. I was perfectly healthy, but I'm not now. There's been a lot of things, because I'm living in a place that I shouldn't be living in. I have nowhere to go, really. I mean, it's not. Home prices are not cheap. I don't know if you're aware of that. A lot of these places are mobile homes. In California, a third of the people live in LA County, and rents there are easily $1,500 for an apartment, for a small apartment. $1,500. Mobile homes, you got to buy the mobile home, okay? And that can run you anywhere from $50,000 to $150,000, and then they want you to pay a rent. And I'm just thinking, gosh, I'm just not going to be able to afford that. I'm going to run out of money. I'm not going to be able to afford something like that. It's just too expensive. And it just seemed like nobody really cared. I mean, it was like that feeling of where you're just kind of being ignored. It's like they ignored me. Not putting the fire. They didn't even come up the road. We have a PG&E line that runs across our land. And I remember them coming up here, and they would have like a bunch of people, and they would cut off a foot underneath the line. Okay, now you know how I was just saying how plants grow back every year? Well, so they would just come back the next year and they would cut another. And then they started sending these really sketchy subcontractors through this other company that they use. And apparently they have these subcontractors everywhere in the state. It's not just here. But it was like, there's just something really creeped me out about these two people. But they wanted to cut down this tree, and it was on the other side of the road. Okay, it was on the other side of the road. It didn't look to me like it was going to fall. It was like they just wanted to do it. It was like they just wanted to do it just to kind of, you know, just to scare me, or to make me, just to bug me, you know, just to bother me. It's like, you guys don't even, and I didn't get angry. I didn't say anything. I refused to let them cut down this tree because this is such a beautiful tree. Of course, this tree burned in the fire. But I wouldn't let them cut down this tree because it was it was an old tree. Excuse me. It was an old tree, and I really liked it, and it didn't seem like it was in any place that was going to fall on their lines, and they weren't even maintaining their lines. And I mean, this is the road, and then over here where the pond is, the power lines go right across the pond. It's like, how dangerous is that? I mean, these people are I don't know what they're trying to do. They can't even take responsibility for their own stuff. And you know, we do get power outages when this. I'm actually surprised that we had this much snow and we haven't had a power outage, because when I lived in my house, the power would go out, and I didn't really pay that much attention to it. I mean, I didn't call anybody and ask, why is it power out? I would just, you know, melt the snow and make water, because you can't use your pump. Everything's powered by water. So I would just kind of hunker down, melt snow water. I think I would melt it on the stove. I didn't even have four-wheel drive back then. I would just go to town and I would get groceries, and you know, it wasn't that hard to keep the groceries. The only thing I mainly was just to have keeping the house warm. So I would have plenty of firewood. I had plenty of firewood over there, because I had storage. You know, I had candles. But now it's like I don't have any place to store anything. These people have just kind of systematically just shined me on, and it's like a system. It's like I don't know if they're trying to get rid of undesirables, because we do have people up here growing pot. We also have religious people, and we have retired people. A lot of the retired people, my grandparents used to live here, but a lot of the retired people have died. This one lady over here, when her house burned down, and they found an open mine shaft underneath her house that nobody knew about. I'm thinking, whoever just subdivided that land had to have known that it was there. I mean, whenever it was done, say it was done in the 50s or 1900, whenever it was done, somebody had to know, or somebody was not telling somebody who just subdivided the land that was there, but they had filled it in, so it wasn't visible. But then as soon as the house was gone, it opened up, you know, because the rain got in there. So I don't know. I think they literally, well, I don't know. No, the house itself wasn't on top of the mine shaft, but man, it's just weird. It's just weird, because I don't even think the people around here want to tell you what really is going on, because they either they didn't know, or they just were keeping things to themselves. But I know I didn't even hear about the class action lawsuit. I think what happened with the state was when the state, because the state paid the counties to hire people to clean up, to help clean up after everything. And they would come in and say, it was sort of an all or nothing deal. You had to either agree to them taking everything, and they were coming in here and saying, okay, is that all the buildings? Are there any other buildings? Like, it was sort of like the Inquisition. Like, are there any other buildings? Like it was like this was their routine. They would just go around, are there any other buildings? You just like, what the fuck? What the hell? Where do I live? You know, and I'm realizing, because I had problems before the fire. There would people would drive on our road. Our road basically goes nowhere. It's a very windy road. People don't take this road unless they're trying to stay off the roads. And people would drive by, and it's like, you think, gosh, you know, what kind of people would just litter? There would be aluminum cans littered. I don't know if if these were people that didn't like me, or were just random people that were working up here, and they would drink beer, and then they would toss it out. Obviously, they would toss it out the window because they didn't want to have an open container in their car. But it was just that, you know, weirdness. And then we had my mailbox got shot at, and you know, my dad just didn't seem very concerned at all. He would roll his eyes, and, you know, it was just like, oh, those crazy kids shooting at mailboxes, you know, that's what crazy kids do. And I'm just thinking, I don't think the crazy kids are doing this. You know, this is somebody angry. And then the day my mailbox got shot, I had been walking my old dog along the road, and I was walking him, and after this, I stopped walking along the roads, and I found mail. So somebody that day was taking mail out of people's mailboxes, and they were just ripping it open, looking for checks. And why that person or another person, somebody, you know, why that happened on the same exact day is very strange to me. Because if you're stealing mail, why would you shoot at a mailbox? Or was it were they doing it to make it look like they were trying to steal mail? You know what I'm saying? Or was it somebody I knew? And they were trying, you know, they were stealing mail from over here, then shoot my mailbox to make it look like it was widespread. So I picked up this mail, and I found the address, and I brought it to the guy, and he was about probably another mile and a half, 2 miles, in a place that it's just pretty far from here, where the roads get really bad. So whoever this was either lived out there, or, you know, I don't know, they were getting back at me, or who knows what. But then I gave it back to him, and he was telling me that they had arrested people. They arrest people all the time, and inside their they'll find just piles of mail that they have stolen. So it's like a thing. But it's like you think that we were so far removed from everywhere. And why would people drive all the way up here with the way gas prices are and steal mail? I mean, is it really that lucrative? It just seems like, can't you just go get a job? Something's not right here. And so after that, you know, I would report these incidents to the sheriff, and they would never get back to me. And I'm just, you know, I'm saying, it's like, something's not right here. It's like, is the sheriff involved in this? Did the sheriff do this? I mean, is there a connection with law enforcement and these crimes? Because they just don't want to deal with stuff. And then we had a guy over here. We leased him our field so he could keep his horses there. He had older horses. He didn't have a place to put them. And they shot our trough. Somebody shot our trough. I don't know if it was a neighbor, but it's like it's not the trough is not on the road. So whoever did it had to go out of their way to go over there, or they shot at it from a very far distance. And then a couple of months later, somebody shot his horse. They just shot it dead. So this is all before the fire. So imagine now the fire hits, and there's all this, there's definitely something going on here. I don't know what. But then me trying to get help, and basically, so I don't know if somebody just was trying to ruin my reputation or get back at me or what it was. I have no idea, because how can you prove something like that? You can't. But it's like it just was like manifesting itself with all this stuff, and then my house burning down, not being able to get help because it wasn't my house. Sometimes these crimes happen, and it's somebody that and you would never ever think that person could possibly be behind it. It just doesn't make any sense to you. That's why you just can't rule anything out anymore. And I'm a very optimistic person, but I mean, this stuff makes me very sad. It makes me very sad that we live in a place where people can't just get jobs and make money. Because if you think about it, the way minimum wage is now, if you could have a job, you could pretty much afford anything. But people just don't want to even, because everybody's out there to make money. Everybody wants to make money, and this is not going to get better on its own. We can't just assume we want to believe that everything's going to work out and that we're going to be fine, but it's not always that way. I mean, history has shown us that this is not a thing that this happens. It happens throughout history, but people are just getting greedy, and they're not being. Prices are going up. We're living in a world of consumerism, and we're not growing our own vegetables, and we're eating things like sugar that's not good for us. But then when you eat things with sugar, you just want more. It doesn't fill you up. We're not eating healthy. I mean, look at this. We have McDonald's on every street corner, and McDonald's has basically no nutritional value. I mean, when you get to my age, eating at McDonald's is like eating styrofoam. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't fill you up. It just costs you $15 for a combo meal. And I mean, I've done it. I've eaten there. It's just we need to step back and look at what is happening and ask ourselves some questions, because people don't want people living out here because you can't control them and you're not going to make money off of them. They just want everybody to live in the cities where they can, control you, decide whether to give you a better job or not, see how good you're doing. Are you following our rules or your own rules? And just all these things, because I live in the city. I had these jobs, and they give you the most measly salaries, so you can barely pay your rent, you can barely buy food, and when you're young, you don't necessarily. It doesn't occur to you, gosh, I'm not saving money. I wonder why am I not saving money? It's because they don't want you to save money. They want you to pay rent. They want you to be part of this system where you're just paying their mortgages off, paying their car payments, while you're taking a bus or the subway and, eating at McDonald's. I mean, McDonald's is a lot cheaper than going out to have an actually healthy meal. But your time too, it's like you're spending all your time sitting somewhere. What are you actually doing? I mean, are you actually gonna see things you want, and I always wanted to travel, so any opportunity I could, I would barely get any time off, because if you take time off, you can't keep a job. So you would get a few weeks of the year, and occasionally I would lose my job, and I would try to save money and travel. I worked for a railway company, and our president announced, he said, they basically bought this company, or they were a big company, and they owned all these shipping systems worldwide. But at some point they started selling off assets of the company, and they sold off their container business, which was a worldwide company, and they sold off some other things, and then all we had left at that point was rail cars. And they swore, okay, we are not selling this. We're not selling this. He's, I will never sell this. And then he announced on, I think it was New Year's Day or Christmas Day or something, that we're selling the rail cars. So everybody at that point knew they were going to lose their job. And I think we had 9 months. They sold it to General Electric Rail Car, and it was like they went out of their way to just calm everybody down, because some of the people were going to get jobs in Chicago. So you don't want to rock the boat if you're going to get a job, right? I personally had only been working there for probably, I'm going to say, but it wasn't even a year, I don't think. It might have been around a year. Maybe it was a year, but that was about it. It was the first job that I got. I had been temping. I had been doing these kind of contractual jobs and freelance jobs, but it was the first job that I had got. So you know how excited I was. It was like, finally somebody likes me. They're gonna hiring me. I got benefits. I can go to the dentist now. I can go to the doctor. Well, that was all dashed because they sold us out, and I was going to lose my job. And I honestly didn't want to move to Chicago, because that was the only option, was to move to Chicago and work at GE Railcar. And to me, they were kind of the enemy. And I was working in the human resource department, so my job was to help people get ready, including myself, I was going to have to go back and do temp work again. But my job was to help people, get ready for this. And we put together, we did a lot of things, but it was just kind of like these government agencies are doing. What can they really do? I mean, other than spend money, what can they really do for these people? I mean, they can help them find jobs. They can create jobs. I mean, they could clean up that area. They could divert the railway tracks away from their houses, for God's sakes. Let that rail car be for Amtrak, or someplace something that's going to be safe. Turn it into a bike lane. Do something that's going to be productive, and it's going to help these people. Put in someplace. Do something that's going to be sustainable, not something that's going to wreck that area more. That's the problem with a lot of these towns up there. They've been neglected for so long. In some cases, that's the only place where people can go, and they need to start thinking about how they can make these areas nicer and not being exploited. And I'm afraid that's what's going to happen, is they're just using these areas to basically supply the eastern seaboard with natural gas and things that they need at the expense of people like in upstate New York and western Pennsylvania. These are very depressed areas. They don't have very good jobs. I mean, I had one job. I was working in Erie, and it was a job that I had just gotten. I was just passing through. I needed money, and we stopped in Erie, and we went to Manpower, and they gave us a job loading tires onto a truck. Okay, So we went out there, and there was just a yard. It was like they had been saving these tires for like 5 years. Like, what the hell? Like, can't you guys just do this like a little bit at a time? But they don't. These places, they don't do things because it's outside their job description. So they'll hire people through manpower or some shady work company, and they'll have them do it. But it's like, couldn't they have loaded these tires on, a little bit at a time? So we're loading these tires on this truck, and it starts raining. Okay, and I'm out there, and I'm basically living in my car trying to get back to California in Erie, Pennsylvania, and we're loading these trucks on this car. I'm getting wet. It's freezing. Well, it wasn't that cold, but it was raining. I can't afford to go to a hotel afterwards, so I'm getting soaking wet. And then it starts thundering and lightning, and I was like, I just kept working, and these two guys that were working with me stopped, and they're just standing there. And I don't know if they were going to take deduction on their pay. We've been working really hard, so I'm sure they were going to take full pay. But at some point, I just said, I kept going. I just kept working because I wanted to get paid, and I'm not going to, lie. I know a lot of people would. So I just kept working, and there was lightning. I'm thinking, if I die, this is where I'm going to die. I'm going to keep working because I need the money. And I kept loading on these things by myself while these two guys just watched me. And at that point, I just said, okay, I'm out of here. And I went and I got my money, and I kept going. I said, I'm not, and it was like, I can't deal with this, I don't know. And I'm already I have back problems, and it's like it's silly to me, this, how we can't even get jobs. You can't even get jobs anymore, and the jobs you do get are so bad because they don't want to do them themselves. These companies would rather just hire it out. I had a job when I was on the East Coast, and it was with like a metal company, and they make metal pieces, and I had to climb under this boiler because it's like the same thing. They don't want to hire people. The people that work there know that this is bad work, and they give you gloves, these cheap ass gloves. They would rip every 15 minutes, and they would give us this paper suits to wear, and I guess, I don't know exactly. It was like, I think I had a hood. And then we had booties, plastic booties. Everything would rip. This is what they're giving to these people to go out, to go out and clean things with. It's like, it makes no sense to me. This is not something you want to mess around with. You don't want to mess around with this stuff. And I would have to climb under this boiler and get a shovel. They have wetbacks, okay? And I kept asking, why can't you get a wetback down there? But there was basically like acid water that ran off from the boiler, and this was the only way they had to clean it, because these machines were put in there in like the 50s or a long time ago, and this is how they intended to do this, or maybe they didn't think they would have to clean them afterwards. But every year they would shut this boiler down because it would take about a week or two for it to cool down enough to where you could actually get under there. And even after 2 weeks, I would be under there, and I could feel the heat coming off this thing. And you would scoop up this like rusty acid water, and the first day, it was a 2-day job, and maybe I was just working too hard. I don't know. But the first day I worked, I was with a Nigerian guy, and we worked, all day, and at the end of the day, and I was covered in acid, and I went home, and I went back the next day, and the Nigerian guy didn't even show up. He was like, I guess he was too smart to show up. But you're just covered with acid. You go, this can't be good, and there's probably asbestos in the air. I mean, these machines who knows what the heck I breathed in from the acid and all this stuff. I hope not, you know. God, I hope not. But he didn't even come back the next day, and I had to go to something afterwards, and I was covered in acid. And I remember having this cell phone, and I guess I forgot to put it in a locker or something because I didn't want it to get stolen. And this little tiny cell phone that I got at the mall, it was just ruined, and they wouldn't give me my money back. It was like, I just feel like people take advantage of people that are, you know, these are the jobs that nobody wants to do, and they just treat you like shit. And it's like the bottom of the barrel, where people are just trying to make an honest living, and they're getting screwed over. And it's just it really makes me mad, because there should be plenty of work. They say over and over again, there's plenty of work, and there's plenty of work, and there's not. Because I mean, and then I think one time I went back to Manpower when I was working for them, and I guess I had showed up late, and they basically told me, don't come back to this office. I mean, this is the attitude of these people. Like, you're working really hard and you're doing your job, you know, and it's nothing's ever good enough. And then they wonder why our economy is so screwed up, because they don't want to work with you, and you know, it's stressful. This stuff is stressful. So they'll just use you, and when they're done with you, they just find another. There's some immigrant waiting in line to take your job, and they don't care that you're having a hard time. They don't care that you're not sleeping at night. They just give your job to somebody else, and then when they're done with that person, they take somebody else. So I mean, we really have to band together as a nation and start demanding things. I'm not saying demanding free money, but I'm saying we need fair jobs, fair work conditions, safe places to live. We need law enforcement that responds, instead of only catering to rich people and to people, you know, with clout, because they're letting these people step on us, and there's no recourse. We're being treated like we're crazy. We know we're not crazy, and they know that there's nothing that we can do about it, because if you don't have money, you can't sue them. You can't sue the government. It's impossible. So it's like these people are protected, and then they come in here and they hire who they want, and they say what they want, and who knows what they're saying about us, because they just don't have anybody else. There's nobody in the chain of command. I mean, I thought our nation was supposed to have weights and measures. I thought everything was supposed to be balanced, so that we have the executive branch looking out for the judicial branch, looking out for the legislative branch. But these people are too mired in their connections that they don't even want to look at us. We're nothing to them. All we are, if you're not a cog in the corporate wheel to them, if you're not giving them money for their campaign, it's a sick thing. And I know people don't want to think about these things because it's not pleasant to think about, but unless people start voting their conscience and not putting up with these things and thinking of ways that they can save money and be responsible, and stop putting that responsibility on the government to the point where you're just blindly being led down a path that they're and paying for someone's mortgage and not expecting something in return. And maybe stop being so nice. Stop expecting. Start expecting things for your money. Your money is paying for these people. You need to start expecting things from them. And if they start giving you backlash, yeah, it's going to take time and you're going to have to fight back. But you need to do these things because unless we start creating a wave of concern and a wave of action, we're not going to get anywhere. I'm sorry I've been talking so long, but I haven't really had a place to sit and talk. I've been so busy cutting firewood, and the dog's been sick. He's been eating too many carbs. I've been eating too many carbs. I was watching this thing where they were saying, "Oh, it's okay to cheat on your diet," but actually, it's not, because sugar just gets you into that cycle again. And I was eating malted milk balls, Easter milk balls, and it's like you just want more, and you're not eating. If you don't eat healthy, you get out of that. You get out of it, and you just want to eat snacks and things, and it's just a waste of money. Eating healthy, it makes much more sense. And you guys starting, if you can get the things you can, and if you have this place to grow things, like me, for example, I can't even get manure. So I mean, if you can get those things, do it. But it's not easy. So if you can't do it, and if you can't afford it, don't feel bad. But find other ways to save money. Try to get your food to last longer. Go shop around. Don't buy things on sale and freeze them. I'm gonna, I want to talk about these things, but I don't necessarily. I think people know what to do. You just have to make the conscious choice of doing them. Thank you for watching. I hope to see you again, and please subscribe and like my channel. And I hope I'm giving you something, feedback on things, and giving you maybe a fresh perspective on how, how I see things going. And please have a good day. Go for a walk. Hug your pets. Call your parents.